Hey guys, what's up? Today we're finishing out the Linguistic Glossary series where I run through a bunch of linguistics terms in an organized fashion and give definitions. The first video covered nouns and pronouns while the second video covered verbs, so this video is about everything except those things we've already covered. That being said, a lot of the terms that apply to these other word classes were already explained in the previous two glossaries, so it may be worth it to give yourself a refresher. For example, grammatical gender is very relevant for articles and adjectives, but I already explained it for nouns, so I'm not doing it again here. There's gonna be a wide variety of grammatical categories in this video, so let's go! So first off, we're going to talk about articles. An article is a small word that you can add to a noun phrase to indicate the specificity of the noun, like whether you have a specific one in mind or not. If you don't get what I mean, just keep watching, it'll become clearer in a minute. They're common in Europe, although more so in the West, the Middle East, and Polynesia, while elsewhere they're pretty hard to find, and to my understanding, articles are one of the most challenging parts of the language to learn when your native language doesn't have them. The most common type of article you'll come across is the definite article, which is used when you have a specific noun in mind, either because it's been mutually established between the speaker and listener that they know what it is, or because it's already been introduced in the story or conversation. Some languages require it for names as well, like Catalan and Greek. It's more confusing though. It could also refer to anything of a given group, like if you hear me in this video talking about the definite article, even when I'm not talking about an example from a specific language. It's often contrasted with an indefinite article, which is used either when you're not pointing out a particular noun, just anything that fits, or you're introducing something new into the conversation. K. Klein recently dropped a video going in depth on that dynamic. Because of what they mean, indefinite articles are almost always adapted forms of that language's word for one. Yes, even in English, although it's less obvious. And due to their apparent oneness, many languages only have singular forms for their indefinite articles, although some, like Spanish, do have plural forms. For some of the other languages, such as French, they instead opt for partitive articles, which basically means some. Partitive articles can also be singular in the case of mass nouns like some milk, which in French is du lait. So those are the main three, but you may also occasionally hear about the negative article, which refers to none of the listed noun, like no milk or something like that. And finally, there's another category of words to talk about here, demonstratives. A demonstrative is a word that draws attention to a particular noun phrase. They can appear as articles, like in this cat, but they're often pronouns instead, like in that's good. In fact, while the previous articles discussed only occur in small pockets around the world, demonstratives are, from my experience, almost universal, and it makes me want to rethink how I do the article section in my language overviews for languages that don't otherwise have articles. Some languages, like Hebrew, only have one set of demonstratives, albeit inflected for gender and number. But many others differentiate their demonstratives by proximity, so they can be even more specific about which noun they mean. Some, like English, have 2 degrees of demonstratives, those being proximal, this, near the speaker, and distal, that, not near the speaker. Note that this doesn't just have to refer to space, it could also refer to chronological or spiritual distance. But some others, like Spanish, add a 3rd degree to this system, where proximal is near the speaker, medial, the new term, is near the listener, and distal in this arrangement is near neither. English actually used to have this as well, with yonder being distal and that having been medial. So now we'll talk about something else that commonly goes next to nouns, adjectives. An adjective is a word that describes a noun, classifies it, or otherwise adds more detail. It's one of those terms you probably learned from Mad Libs. Like with articles, most of the terms used to describe adjectives are directly tied to nouns, like anything related to gender, number, or case. But there are some terms specifically for adjectives. To start, there are the 3 terms for the adjective's position in the sentence. The first one is attributive. This means that the adjective is inside the noun phrase, directly modifying it, like in the big cat. By contrast, an adjective can also be predicative, which means that it's in the verb phrase. The predicate is just a fancy term for the verb phrase. That verb is normally a copula, like English be, but some other verbs work too. For example, the sentence, the cat is big, has a predicative adjective, but so does the cat looks big. The third position is the postpositive, which technically just means after the noun, making the term kind of moot in any language that normally puts attributive adjectives there, but it does have a meaning that's relevant across languages. Essentially, if you're cutting out the phrase that is or that are, that being the conjunction in this case, you have a postpositive adjective like in show me something big. You could also say it as show me something that's big. There's sort of a 4th position as well. In most languages, the lines between adjectives and nouns are a bit blurry. Adjectives can be straight up used as nouns, and this is called nominalized. Think of all those those old monarchs with nicknames like the Great, the Terrible, the Unready, stuff like that. Other languages often do it more freely. So then there are degrees, sometimes lengthened to degrees of comparison, because that's what they do. Degrees are inflections made on an adjective to indicate that the noun is more of the adjective than something else, or the most of the adjective. And yes, those are 2 of the 3 degrees, but they have names. For more, that's the comparative degree, and for most, that's superlative. And if the adjective isn't doing either of those, that's called positive. But sometimes a language could have a degree that includes both comparative and superlative and can also mean very in other contexts. Arabic has it, and that's called elative, although I have no idea if that term is used for any other language. In fact, that term is a very interesting choice because you may remember it from the noun glossary. It's the name for the case or adposition that indicates coming out of something, and that meaning makes sense etymologically. You could also say that Italian has an elative degree with the issimo suffix, but there, along with a few other Romance languages, it's called the absolute superlative. So finally, we can define adverbs as well. While adjectives describe nouns, adverbs describe verbs, or adjectives, or adpositions, or even other adverbs, basically anything that's not a noun. Many languages have a standard way to turn an adjective into an adverb, like the English "ly" suffix, although plenty languages don't do that and just use the unaltered adjective as an adverb. But it should be mentioned that not all adverbs come from adjectives. A lot of words, especially those relating to time, are adverbs in their own right with no connection to an adjective. Yesterday and tomorrow are good examples of this. So now our next topic is numerals, which are basically just the fancy term for number words. Outside of terms you learned in math class, the main dichotomy you'll hear for this one is cardinal versus ordinal. Cardinal numbers are probably your first thought when it comes to numerals. They're used for counting how many of something there are, and they start 1, 2, 3. By contrast, ordinal numbers indicate where in an order something is, and they start first, second, third. But there are a few more numeral terms, a lot of which have limits to their application. For example, an adverbial number is used to indicate how many times something happened. In English, we only have once and twice for that, maybe thrice if you're feeling medieval. There are also multipliers, which tell you how many times to multiply something by, and English actually has 2 sets of these, as it does with many words. There's the Germanic set of one-fold, two-fold, and three-fold, but there's also the better known Latin set of multipliers, single, double, and triple. Finally, there are fractionals, which indicate the number of parts something's been divided into. Most of our fractionals in English, along with many other languages, are the same as our ordinals, like third, fourth, and fifth, but the first 2 are different, being whole and half. Yup, those can be considered numerals in some contexts, while also being nouns. Next up are the adpositions. An adposition is a word that indicates the relation between objects or an object in an action or some combination like that. But now you may be wondering why you've never heard this term before. That's because you're probably more familiar with its hypernyms. Adpositions are called prepositions when they go before the noun phrase and postpositions when they go after. This is actually kind of a hot topic in linguistic typology, as languages almost always pick one or the other, not both, and they're often linked to other syntactic tendencies a language has and could be used to link families together. Just read on screen if you want. But just like the whole dilemma with adjectives sometimes being syntactic nouns, there's some variation on adpositions here as well, as many of them come from other parts of speech. We do have the simple adpositions, which are the real adpositions, so to speak, like to, from, in, etc. But then there are complex adpositions, which put multiple words together, like in front of. And in Romanian, which I just made an overview about, this exact phrase is one word that syntactically behaves somewhat like a noun. In front of me in Romanian is înaintea mea, which translates to in my front. There are also marginal adpositions, which are typically gerunds, such as concerning or including. And now we get to the conjunctions. A conjunction is when 2 or more solar system objects are next to each other in the sky. Way wrong field. In linguistics, it's essentially a word that connects different words or phrases to each other. The first group of them, and the most abstract, are the subordinating conjunctions, which connect a main clause to a subordinate clause. This could come in a few varieties, like because, although, as, and more. Another big subordinating conjunction is that, but other languages distinguish further here into 2 conjunction types, and I'll recycle the examples from the Swedish language overview because Swedish makes this distinction without complication. First are the complementizers, which simply connect a full clause to the subordinate clause, such as in I know that we saw the movie together, where I know, an independent clause in its own right, is being conjuncted. In Swedish, that's jag vet att vi såg filmen tillsammans. The other type are the relativizers, which only connect a noun to a subordinate clause, like in I liked the movie that we saw yesterday, where only the movie, a noun, is being connected. That Swedish sentence is jag gillade filmen som vi såg igår. So in a Swedish context, we'd say that att is the complementizer, while som is as the relativizer. And here, I feel a need to mention that not all languages even use conjunctions for complementizing or relativizing purposes. Especially for SOV languages, they often make a change to the verb to indicate that role, and yes, it was discussed back in that video, but there are two other types of conjunctions as well. One group is the coordinating conjunctions, which describe the relationship between two nouns, clauses, etc. A very famous coordinating conjunction is and, which means that the things on both sides of it are applicable. But and or are other good ones. And the final type of conjunction is a correlative conjunction, which are generally used in pairs to connect two thoughts, either to compare them or to give a cause and effect, such as if and then, either and or. Yes, there's some overlap with the coordinating conjunctions, and as, like in as good as. Nearing the end here, now we can talk about particles. A particle is defined as a small, unchanging word used for grammatical purposes rather than having a lexical meaning like a noun or verb that doesn't fit well into any other category. But in my head, particle is just a linguistic term for thingamajig. It kinda is used as such, to be honest. But either way, there are two main particles you'll hear about, both of which came up in the verb glossary. An interrogative particle indicates that the sentence is a question, like Arabic hal, while a negative particle makes the sentence negative, like no in Spanish. Auxiliary verbs also often count as particles, like all the tense markers in Haitian Creole. Basically, the vast majority of words that can go before particle in a linguistic context have already been defined in a glossary video. Finally, we got interjections. An interjection is just an independent phrase not attributed to any other word class that can't really go with anything else logically in a sentence. The interjections that probably come to mind first are exclamations made in reaction to something like ha or ouch, and this can border on curses like damn, which is technically a verb, so yes, this class is once again fuzzy. Greetings are another type of interjection like hi or bye, and they can also sometimes be longer phrases like oh my god. Onomatopoeias, which are words that imitate a sound, can often be lumped in here like boing. However, while they may have been on your minds for this video, onomatopoeias don't technically belong here because they're an etymological category more than a word class. A word from any part of speech could have onomatopoetic origins, like many animals that are named after a sound they make. Interestingly, I've heard a hypothesis that this may even apply to the Proto-Indo-European ancestor of cow, although this isn't definitive. So those are all the word classes that I hadn't explained yet, and with that, the entire glossary series is now complete. But there are still more concepts I want to explain and use as reference videos, and I have a few ideas on that front, but do you have anything like that you really want to see? Leave them in the comments. I hope this whole series was helpful for the beginners and at least sufferable for the pros who are just watching because linguistics videos are always interesting. Thanks for watching, I'll see y'all next time.